And one of my roles is to help early education professionals tell their compliance and safety story as part of their compelling best practice and safety message to staff and families. So when I first met Katie Quesada, hello, Katie. I'm sure they can all see your face as well. Nice to have you here.
So glad to be here.
So when I first met Katie, it was this 30-minute intensive, and then there was a 90-minute that I also attended in a story school that I'm presently in. And I was fascinated and intrigued about the art of storytelling. And I picked up the phone, emailed Katie, and said, listen, I think our community of early childhood professionals would really benefit from the art of telling a compelling story. Our schools are similar in so many ways, but what really makes it unique is the gift of your story. So I was delighted when Katie said, sure, I'll come on and share the basics and get them started. And that's what we were doing today. It's a 30-minute storytelling intensive. So if you didn't see my post about who Katie is, I'll tell you briefly, she is an acclaimed speaker and consultant who's deeply passionate about the art of storytelling. Katie has recently worked with top brands like SpaceX, United Healthcare, American Eagle Outfitters, and more. And she ignites them to tell their story in a more effective manner and to build high trust within teams and increase sales. Katie and her husband, Danny, live with their 2 daughters in Orange, California. And I love this part. They spent 2 years living in a 180 square foot tiny home. They believe that stories are better than stuff. So Katie, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Lynn. It's so great to be here. I am, as you kind of heard a second ago in my story, I am also very importantly the mother of an early childhood human. So that is a big part of why this community matters to me. And we've spent the last 8 years, we have an 8 and now 5-year-old in amazing childcare facilities, being stay-at-home parents with nannies. I mean, we have done the whole childhood care gamut. But we had a beloved childcare center the last 2 years that really changed our life. I mean, it was a part of our family and really matters to us. And so when you were talking about the work you do, I was like, wait, this matters to me too in so many ways as a parent, but also in storytelling and how we connect with families. If you're listening here live, I'm so happy to have you. If you're going to watch this recording, we're so happy that you're here. I would love to hear from you if you are here and happen to be at your computer sitting. Would you mind putting in the chat just where you are and what you do for work? So your name, where you are, what you do for work. Drop that in the chat so that we can continue the conversation. This isn't just going to be me for 30 straight minutes blasting you with information, although I do have a lot of information in a very short amount of time. I would love to hear from you if you're here, if you can drop in the chat and say hi. Oh, I think someone said a Q&A. Oh, the chat is disabled. Okay, great. Let's
fix that.
That's great. But it's also kind of a Q&A. That's amazing. To host and oh, great. I fixed it. I think I fixed it. Try again. Did it work for anyone? To everyone. Oh wait, okay. Maybe not.
Samantha, try again. I see you were the one that noticed the chat was disabled.
Okay. No, not working on our end, but we can see yours. Okay. Let me see if I can fix this. Well, you can all type in the Q&A. So we can hack the system here and type in a Q&A. Let me see real quick if I can fix it. If not, we'll move on because I know we got only a short amount of time, but you guys can drop all your answers in the chats as well. I mean, in the Q&As as well. Okay. If you have a Q&A, oh, good. Rachel, you put it in there. Thank you. Drop it in pretend it's a question and just say your name and what you do, even though it's not a question. Thank you. I can see it. I'm from Texas. And I ensure best and brightest childcare rock stars. I love that. Florida. I own Impact Early Education. Oh my gosh, Dallas, Texas, owner of Rose Marketing Solutions. Perfect. This is so great. You own 2 different locations. You own 3. That's so helpful. This is great. What a great gift of work that you do. You work with these tiny, amazing humans and wonderful staff teams. This is such a gift. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about this whole idea of the art of storytelling. And I'm going to give us flash quick tidbits so that you can really start thinking through, oh, wait, okay, how I tell my stories matters, how my staff does, and how we communicate that in marketing and communications is incredibly valuable to who we are in the work we do. And that really comes from this idea, which I'll share my screen with you. So Story School is this idea that I founded, which is that everyone can tell better stories, that we are not bad or good storytellers. We are actually all getting better at our storytelling. And Lynn told a little bit about me and my story, but my husband and I sold everything we owned and moved into a 180 square foot renovated travel trailer with our 2 kids. And that's a longer story for another day, but we really learned that stories are better than stuff in that season. And in this season, I launched a storytelling consulting business, which is a job I made up. And thankfully it worked. So now I get to do this full time. I get to work with incredible brands and organizations. I get to do ongoing consulting and coaching. And really the work that I do is I help people say what they're trying to say with less words more effectively. So if you have a staff team member, if you have an organization that you're like, what makes us unique and different that's besides our colors and our sign, right? It's the things that really matter. It's the stories. And in our flash workshop together today, we're really going to start thinking about what stories are you and your team telling about your organization? And are they working, right? Because for a lot of us, I'll stop sharing on and off just so you can see my face bigger, but for a lot of us, our teams truly are telling stories like this. Well, we were founded in 1998 and we used to be in a different building, and parents are like, okay, that's what we think is the story at hand. When in reality, our stories have to have a hero. They have to have something that matters. They need to have a guide. There's all these pieces to storytelling that really, really matter in how we share stories. But on accident, what we do in organizations, and especially I've noticed in the chat, a lot of you have multiple organizations, or maybe you have a franchise or you're working across multiple properties. What we do on accident is that one person tells a story, often the founder, and then everyone else repeats it to the best of their ability. And then 4 layers down is a 22-year-old who doesn't remember any of the details and is telling a parent something like, yeah, I don't know, we've been around for a while, my sister went here. And you're like, okay, wait, let's figure out as an organization, what types of stories are we telling? Why does that matter? And how do we do it in a way that is concise and compelling? So in our quick next 15 minutes together, I'm just going to go through the science of storytelling, the basic building blocks of one story, and then how we can implement that in our organization. So if you have pen and paper, grab it. This is going to be like a note-takey, quick flash thing. And then if you have anything that you want to drop in the chat, just enter it as a question and I will be able to see it. So I would love for you to say like, oh, wow, this is me. Wait, I have a really specific question. Wait, my organization is really interesting in that. Drop in any questions in your chat. This will be more of a conversation that way in the Q&A, I mean, and I would love to hear more from you. So let's kind of talk about why this matters together. So there is a lot of science in storytelling that is really, 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 really important. The science of storytelling really is now we know that people remember things significantly better when you tell it to them in a story, right? Is anybody else, you can pretend you're raising your hand and I can see you. Is anyone else tired, overwhelmed, full of information, and is watching a million tiny online videos and our brain hurts? Yes? Okay, good. We're all in the same boat on that. But what we know, oh, I could see someone raise their hand, even though I can't see your camera on. Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate that. What I know and see in this is what we've realized is that the science matters when it comes to storytelling because human interpersonal storytelling works. It is highly effective in growth within organizations. That's the only reason I can say that my company took off the way it did, is because storytelling really works. Companies that craft and create compelling narratives have higher sales, more students who come, more kids in their centers, more families who feel like they can replicate the story themselves. It actually does work scientifically. There's an amazing study out of the University of Ohio where 2 rooms of people, they had 100 college students in each room. And on a Monday morning at 9 a.m., they gave one of the rooms a list of facts. They gave the other room the exact same list of facts, but they wrapped it in a story. Okay? Then 1 week later, they pop quizzed both rooms with no warning. And they said, repeat back to me that list of facts we gave you last Monday. In the room that was told no story, just facts, only 5% of the students remembered the facts. In the room that was told a story, 65% of the students could correctly memorize the series of facts because it was wrapped in a story, right? We know that stories release oxytocin in our brains, and oxytocin gives us empathy and the desire to cooperate. Raise your hand if this empathy and the desire to cooperate is what you want from your staff, right? Is what you want from your families, is what you want for a team, right? Thank you, Ruth Ann, I see your hand. Empathy and the desire to cooperate is what we get when someone tells us a compelling story. And this is because, which one of the things that Lynn and I talked about early on is so valuable, is that if you want someone to do something in today's world, you have to make them feel something. So we are so far past like a list of data points, or, we're so far past what works in early childhood is we have 212 students registered. Do you want to be 213? It's like, wait, that wasn't compelling. That didn't make me feel anything. You gave me a statistic off of a slide, right? That's not what really caused me to move in that sort of direction. So I want to take a second and just say, what are some things in your world, drop it in the Q&A right now that you see are stories that aren't working, like history, data points, or just boring founder stories, or stories of someone who doesn't even work there anymore, right? Does anyone have any specific stories that you have seen that aren't working within your organization? You can drop them in the chat. It can be something like, I've never even thought about the stories we're telling. Today is the first time I'm realizing what it is. It might be something like you've realized that your organization is so new and you keep saying we're brand new, but that hasn't been helpful. Anyone have any options of things they've seen that aren't working in their storytelling? Okay, I'll continue as
I know you get to this, but I just wanted to say that from my side, one of the things that I do is I go on websites and I kind of look for unique story or that something that's very special about the website. Because typically we get in the habit of saying, this is where we're located, these are our hours, sometimes there's tuition, this is our curriculum. And those are all important pieces of information. But like you're saying is moving the needle slightly, which I can't wait to see some of the dialogue around this, moving the needle to be able to relate to that emotion. Because as a parent, my emotion about bringing my very precious child to your school, I want to be able to relate emotionally to what it is about your program, which could be exactly identical to the one down the street as far as what you offer, but there's something about that emotional connection. So that's something I see on the website. So it's not just our stories, but it's how we tell our stories on the website is what you're getting to.
Absolutely. And the stories that we're telling on a website, it's amazing what we know in marketing and what we know in storytelling across the board is that for especially young families, the highest level of storytelling is going to be a other parent testimonial. So it isn't even going to be you saying, trust me, we're great. It's going to be a fellow parent saying, I sent my kid, they changed their life. I felt safe every day. And I couldn't believe what it meant to me as a dad. From Sean, Northwest Philly, photo of Sean, right? So those kinds of hyper-specific storytelling details is when you really get into compelling marketing. Even with my own child early education center, I said to them once, like, oh, wow, it seems like there's been a big uptake in registrations. What was it? And they said, somebody posted in one Facebook group about us. And that's how we got all these signups. And so I'm sure everyone in the chat's like, yes, that's how we've grown too. So how do we take those stories, right? How do we take those stories and really start to use them intentionally is what we're going to get to. When speaking and giving your experience credentials doesn't really grab anyone, but the story about your experience does. And thank you so much. That's such a great example. So Anne basically is saying, which she's 100% right on. This is what I work with C-suite teams on. When you say, hi, I'm Anne. I have my MD, BD, CD, RDA. Parents are looking at you like, huh? And this is exactly the same in C-suites now. There are a lot of people who have a lot of degrees, advanced degrees, and then they introduce themselves with a lot of letters and a lot of words. And people are like, first of all, I lost you after BA, right? And second of all, I don't know what you're talking about. But instead, if Anne were to say something like, yeah, I have multiple degrees in this field, but most importantly, I got to work last year with someone named Sarah. And Sarah's family was having a really hard time with blank. And then we saw blank, and now she blank. And now I all of a sudden feel something and I'm like, Anne, you're so great at your job. This is amazing, right? Because she shared a story in connection to what was really happening. And that in real time. And then someone, this is what's important, then someone could see themselves in your story. Because when you say your name and a bunch of letters, no one can see themselves in that.
That's
But
right.
when you story where someone else gets to be the hero, they can really see themselves in that. That's so great. Play-based curriculum, the importance of quality versus childcare. These are all actually really powerful micro stories, right? So we use this kind of curriculum. That is a fact. But the stories we actually wrap that in, why it matters, how it makes a child feel, a specific example of what that looks like so that someone knows what they mean, right? That's when those things really come to life for a parent, especially in connection to insider language, right? So in another workshop, we'll dive way deeper into this, but a lot of us use so much insider language within our field, like, oh, we use RDR curriculum. And parents are like, I don't know what that means, right? I have no idea what you're talking about. But when we actually start to explain that and say, what story am I telling about that? How do I go through that effectively? So I'll walk you through just a basic building block of storytelling in this time together. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. There are 3 basic building blocks to storytelling. And these 3 basic building blocks are context, conflict, and conclusion. Context, conflict, and conclusion. This is incredibly important because for a lot of us, we're like, what is this lady talking about when she says tell a story? I have no idea. Storytelling is so nebulous, right? We think of like Pixar or Reels or that one lady who talks too long, right? But in reality, storytelling is everywhere. It is everything. It is key. It is vital to who we are. And the truth is, especially if you are an owner, founder, creator, the truth is no matter what, you're already telling stories. You are all already telling stories. What we get to ask today is, are they good ones? And are they working, right? So if your website story, or if your staff team training, or if the way you communicate with people, with parents especially, right? As you think through that sort of storytelling intentionally, you can go through the 3 basic C's of storytelling. And those 3 C's are context, conflict, and conclusion. Every single story ever told has these 3 pieces, no matter how short and no matter how long. Context is who was it? What was going on? Conflict is what almost went wrong, what wasn't working, what was breaking, what was happening that wasn't working, right? And conclusion is, but now they realized, and so we see, and now we get to, right? So you can actually take any testimonial within your organization and put it back through this lens to make it way more effective. So if you have someone write in and say, this was the best thing I ever did, my child loved my time here. They had so much fun. We'd actually looked a lot of different places. My son's name is Sean, and we had a hard time because he has a diagnosis with allergies. We love bright futures, right? You can say back to them, thank you so much for your testimonial. Do you mind if I rewrite that for our website? And 99.9% of the time, families say yes. And then you could say, we had a boy named Sean walk into our centers. He had recently been diagnosed with significant allergies. We have context. Now we have some conflict. We had looked at multiple locations. The families weren't sure where to turn next. Let's build up that conflict, right? Then conclusion, until he walked in the door at Bright Futures. He knew that this was his home. The teachers ran up to him. We created a safe environment for him. And Sean spent 4 years with us before entering kindergarten. You know, like these and now you have this beautiful story from a kind of random testimonial that a mom wrote on her phone while she's trying to drop off her kid and leave a 5-star review, right? These things are all really tricky in real time and in real life, but this is the basic building block for any story. You cannot leave out any one of these C's and still tell a good story. I think I saw a couple things enter the Q&A real quick. I want to check that for a second, just to see if that's coming. But this is also incredibly valuable when we think about, let me stop sharing my screen real quick. Great. Yes, I see them in there. Awesome. So as we think through this 3 C's, context, conflict, and conclusion, this is also really important for when you're training your staff teams, right? Because your staff teams are going to be your best marketing staff. Like your entire marketing team in early education is just your teachers, right? They're all there. They're going to be meeting families face to face, talking about the work you do. And all of them need to be armed with stories that make parents feel safe, feel connected, and feel like they know why this is the right place for them, right? I've talked to other fellow moms and said, oh, why didn't you go to that preschool? Why didn't you choose that one? And I've had moms say to me, I just didn't feel anything, you know? Yeah, and I'm like, oh, okay, they didn't pass the vibe check. It's like, what are we saying about that? What we're really saying is, I didn't feel emotionally connected. I didn't hear a story that made me feel anything. I didn't have a staff team that was really physically and energetically present with me, right? These are some baseline things that can really up your conversion rate more and more and more as you think through, okay, I really want to make sure that my staff team is prepared. And that's why for today, in our tiny bit of time together, here's what your homework is. Here's what your takeaway is. How are you finding and using the best stories within your organization that you already have, which is parent testimonials, staff longevity, and child first stories? These are the 3 stories right now that I think you can write down. Okay, I need to write down, I got to get better parent testimonials and put those on my site. I need to get staff longevity, and I got to figure out who's been here for a long time and why did they stay, right? And then I got to figure out child first stories, child success stories, stories where the child is the hero, which in another workshop, we'll dive way deep into that and how to do that, which is really fun. But these are kind of the 3 things in our tiny bit of time together that I would say as a founder, okay, wait, I need to do this. And then when you find those stories, your job is to mine for them, refine them, and remind people of them. You are going to mine for good stories. You are going to refine those stories, and then you are going to remind people of those stories. And some of you are like, Katie, how am I supposed to refine a story, right? I don't have the time. I'm a founder. I can't take a testimonial and rewrite it and put it on my website, right? I'm way too busy. What I would suggest is that you use ChatGPT as your friend. I would suggest you take a quote, an idea, a story of a student, and you put it in ChatGPT and you say, make this shorter and more human. Make this a testimonial for a website that is clear and concise. Pull out the best parts of this story and make it good for my website about page. ChatGPT is our friend, right? We want to use the robots, but the most important part of this is that in AI and in a ChatGPT world, it's actually going to be your human storytelling that makes all the difference.
That's
It's going to
right.
be the stories of your actual kids in your centers. It's going to be the stories of actually you as a founder, right? How we cut through the noise is your hyper specific real-time storytelling, right? Like me telling the story of my daughter who had a really hard first 2 days at preschool, like cried hysterically. I cried, right? And I was like, we're all crying and this is not going well. And I thought I probably should never have left her, right? I'm like, I'm a horrible mom. She's a sad kid. What's going to happen? And how 5 staff members on my way out said, this is totally normal. You're a great mom. You're doing a great job. She's going to have an amazing day. She's going to love class. Wait till you see her at pickup. She's going to have a great time. And then an hour later, when that staff texts me, Lainey's having a great time. Everyone's doing great. And then of course, 2 weeks later, she knows every kid in her class's name. I'm bringing her teacher coffee. Everyone is my best friend. And I'm like, I love it here. This is the greatest place, right? And that's because there was so much assurance and connection. And all of that came because other parents said, this place is great. I read those testimonials. Let me tell you, my child's preschool's website, it's not beautiful, right? It's not the most amazing thing on earth, but it had powerful testimonials and stories that drew me in, which is how all of us are really being drawn in over and over again, is through these really specific ways that we can grab attention. So mine, refine, remind. These are the 3 things you're going to do in your storytelling homework this week. What are some practical ways you can do that? I'll give you some really practical ways you can do that. Number 1, I want you to send an email to your entire staff team today and say, hey, we're building our list of stories as an organization. Would you mind sending me back a story that's 4 sentences or less of a student recently who's had success? Just ask your entire staff today. By end of day, send me a story that's 4 sentences or less about a kid who has overcome something and had success. Just start to build that list. Then I would say point number 2, at your front desk, whoever your receptionist team is, which I have a personal theory that the person at the front desk of any organization that works with children is one of the most important hires you'll ever make. And so whoever that person is, right, I would have them print off a QR code to where you leave reviews. That QR code needs to be hanging next to the window, and it needs to say, while you wait, leave us a review. Then you need to have that front desk person say, hey, we have a goal this week to get 10 5-star reviews, or to get 10 reviews. While you're waiting for your kid, would you mind just scanning that really quick? That as a marketing tool for your organization might be worth more than any money you're spending anywhere else, is just parents telling positive stories about your organization. So have those front desk QR codes up, start collecting those stories, start getting those testimonials. And then if you have a family that's an all-star family, like maybe some of you have like families where 12 kids have gone through your organization. I mean, you're like, oh my gosh, they just keep sending people over and over and over again. If you have an all-star client, I would start by calling that client and saying, or kid or family, hey, we're actually writing up a couple of our favorite family stories. Would you mind if yours is included? Would you mind sending me back what you think the story of Bright Futures is? What you think the story of, and just ask. And you wouldn't believe how many people want their story featured, right? Because it feels special. It feels exciting and encouraging. So that's our story wrap up for now because it's 10:27. I want to show you all kind of what we have coming up. If this was interesting to you, drop in the question interesting or I'm thinking or any questions you have, drop in the Q&A, anything you're thinking if you're here live with us. While I open up the next thing, you can say, now I'm thinking, or I am wondering this.
Katie, while we're pulling up that slide and people are jotting their comments,
Yeah.
something else that occurred to me as well that you just mentioned is, they've sent their 12 kids, but another really neat story is when the student comes back to work at the childcare program.
Oh, yes, yes. And it's like such a history of longevity and connection. And people can all see their kids in that story, right? They can see their kids growing up and coming back and going and working there, right? Those are the stories that's kind of like the proof of the pudding. This thing works. People keep coming back. I think that's a great example. If this was intriguing to you or you feel connected or you're like, wait, I really do want to actually think about my organization's story and I want to think about how we tell it, we're offering a 90-minute workshop. And in this one, we'll actually get to dive a lot deeper into you and your story. This is the workshop that I've done for brands like Nike, for United Healthcare, for countless other organizations. I was telling Lynn, I did one yesterday for an entire unified school district so that they can really get their story working and their story happening. So this is going to be where we workshop your actual story. We're going to dive into the hero's journey, which is really important to storytelling. You'll get to hear more about that. And then we'll get to actually pull the stories out from you and your own experience. And that's going to be really helpful as well. So if you're going to get an email from Lynn with a link as well, but here is the QR code. You can feel free to scan this on the bottom. And enter your information, and that's going to help you sign up for the next workshop, which is September 24th, 1 to 2:30 p.m. EST, and earlier if you're me on PST. So that's what's coming up next. But this, I hope this all kind of scratched your brain and helped you think about it and realize, oh wait, there's a lot happening here that I can do to tell better stories and to really increase my storytelling skills. So that will be a really helpful part of the process as well.
So much that you've covered here, Katie. So I'm kind of reflecting back on the 3 C's. They will get a handout that has the three C's. So it's context, conflict, conclusion.
Yes.
Got that right. Okay. Yep. The 3 C's, and then also mining those stories, refining those stories. What was the third part of that? It was mine, refine,
remind, the most important one. So you have to tell them over and over and over again, because people need to hear a story on average like 3 to 5 times, especially if it's a micro story, something quick, for it to really stick and to be reteachable. I saw Ruth say, do you offer any other day? I'm bummed I can't make it. We can talk about doing a recording. And then I also offer an online course and coaching packages. So you can check out katiequesada.com for all of that to see more. And you guys are processing through how to tell better stories. So I think that that's really helpful. Thank you so much for joining live if you did. And I know if you're on the recording, there's still so much here you can continue to get out of it. But your story is worth telling because you're doing amazing work of creating safe spaces for small children. Thank you for doing that.
And thank you, Katie, for your time today and introducing us to the concept of compelling stories. And I'm so thrilled that you're coming back to do that workshop with us. Where we can actually get hands-on. It's not just the quick 30 minutes, 90 minutes where we'll pause. You'll actually review some of the stories, who our heroes are. It's really push up your sleeves and walk away with the ability to tell a story in a minute or less about your school, about your program, about a family, about a child. So I hope folks will come back and join us for that. If you're listening to the recording, you can also scan that, and we'll also be putting that out on social media for you to sign up. This recording from today is only going to be available until September 24th. Great. And then after that, it will be sunset. Thank you again, Katie, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you. Can't wait to hear your stories.
Thank you.